Ready? Yes.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. What if the podcast did grow to have other forms of aviation in it? Whether it's hot air balloon pilots, sailplane pilots, rockets.
Like how close to a balloon can a paramotorist fly? How close to a sailplane can a paramotorist fly?
747.
And a 4740. Yeah, all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as there's a little bit of paramotor in there.
You keep the name, right?
Yeah.
But let's say that you start doing other interviews with people that aren't associated with this, but then somebody sees that, you might introduce new people to paramotoring. Like, oh, I didn't know what that was.
Gateway drug, right?
I wish I was paid.
Gateway drug. You know, I realized that the Paramotor Podcast started back in 2019. And what happened is as I was in the hospital, Tom, such a dear friend, came to visit me in the hospital so many times, more than anybody, while I was there.
Had nothing else to do.
Fuck, whatever.
No, I would.
Well, in that case, fuck you too, Frank.
You know, I was also a tough love kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
Matter of fact, honest, brutally honest and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, I care, you know, and it meant a lot to me to be able to be there, you know, for you and Leandra and the kids and your parents and all that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we'd already experienced another loss in the community here. And so
Right.
it hits hard when it happens the
mean
second time.
with Lee?
With Lee
Yeah.
Boone. It was
Actually, on that note, there's a little gift for Tom. Do you remember the sweater that we all were wearing? And you're
oh
like, what does
yeah,
that
the
mean?
love bug. The love bug.
So Lee's
No
mom,
kidding.
Lee's mom.
Oh, yeah.
Ordered one for you.
Wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Lee's parents are incredibly dear friends of ours now, more so than when Lee was with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing how we bonded with them.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, they've actually come out to my office where I work and released a weather balloon with me, and we just had the best time ever.
Yeah.
Right. And so I flew with Lee for over 10 years, right, here in the local community. And I can say this, bar none, including family members that I've lost, his loss is one of the ones I've struggled with most. And he died real close to where I work. And so every day I drive right past where he crashed.
Right.
And I have to see it every day on the way to work and on the way home. And so twice a day I have to try to tell myself, don't look over there.
Yeah.
Right. So
I get it. I
is
do the
tough.
same thing. Like every time I pass that road next to the little diner,
Yeah.
it's like my eyes move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
what happens to me.
Yeah. Same thing.
And it's now been over a year and I still have to fight it.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally get it. If anybody listening to this right now has been around since some of the earlier episodes of the Paramotor Podcast, I would love to know. So I'll shout you out if you put it in the comments and you're one of the OG listeners. I was telling Alexis today that I used to make this joke during those recordings, since there were no cameras to validate that the person was actually with me. I'd say, hey, thanks so much for flying all the way out here to the studio. Do you remember that? Yeah. But now with the revitalization of the Paramotor Podcast, people have been flying out. And Alexis is the second person now.
Right.
Because we had Travis Burns last week. No.
Oh, the third.
No, we had Kit. And then
And
before
Kit,
that, Kit
yeah.
drove from San Antonio.
And Tucker.
I want to know if
And
I
Tucker.
beat
So
now we're
Travis
up
on
to-
miles.
Did you?
I want to know. I'm probably not, but
You
I should
win,
figure
you win
it
the
out.
mileage, though.
Do
I'll
I?
tell you. I'll
Furthest
tell you right
coming
now.
from.
We got Lee Cookie over here. He's helping
Validator.
us out. Yeah. He's our Jamie
So
for
what
the
you're
Joe
saying is
Rogan
we used
show.
to fake it, but we can't fake it anymore? You used to fake it?
It's a
Can't fake
genuine
it.
thank you now.
So now I actually have to get them to come here with an airplane. Yeah, not a paramotor. That would take.
That would take a very long time.
Well, that would be something.
Yeah. Well, we did. Remember there was a guy,
Jean-Claude.
Who's that?
Can you please
yeah.
get him to fly paramotor?
Yeah.
Jean Francois Chabot.
Yeah.
Yeah. He.
Schoolcraft, Kalamazoo.
She made that up. It's not a real town.
Jean-Francois Chabot, I could not say his name to save my life during the recording, but he actually flew his paramotor all the way from San Diego, stopped here in El Paso,
He was going
recorded a
cross-country.
podcast episode with us, and then continued his way to Florida, crossed over, is that the Gulf? Yeah, and then over on into Mexico. Or I think he even went.
That's
even
way
further.
more impressive than me boarding an
And
airliner.
then,
Yeah,
and then to make that story even more outstanding, he flew all the way to England across the Atlantic Ocean on one tank of gas.
He was
right?
incredible,
Yeah.
but his camera died, so he had no way to prove
No
it.
proof.
Yeah,
There's no photo. It didn't happen.
that's right. Alexis Quintana, everybody. Alexis is joining us today from Southwest Michigan, right? And
1,575 miles away.
she flew 1,575 miles all the way from Southwest Michigan to be here and share a little bit about the USPPA. She is the president of the United States Powered Paragliding Association, which is really, really cool. Before you, it was Noah Rochetta, and then prior to him, it was the founder,
Jeff Goin.
Jeff Goin.
Yeah, Jeff
Because I
Goin.
remember we had him on the podcast, I think twice, and I think it would be really cool to get him here. Now, that shouldn't be too hard because he's probably got bajillions of miles
Right.
to be able to fly here, and not to mention he flies every sort of aircraft imaginable. He can just pick any of them and make his way here. But Alexis Quintana, very, very talented paramotor pilot. You also are a flight instructor with Leading Edge PPG, and you are on the Airythmia flight demonstration team, doing badass things with that. Thank you for flying all the way out here to be on the podcast with us today.
So glad to get to be here. This has been awesome.
You went out cruising in the desert on my four-wheeler today. Leandra took you out. That was her first ride without me. What did you think of El Paso?
Oh, it's beautiful. I love the desert. I just love it. One of my favorite places is Moab. So I've been trying really hard to get back there to do some paramotor flying, and being out on the 4x4 today with her. It's like I wanted to fly. It was so nice because not a cold weather flyer. I don't need to. I don't want to.
Right.
So it's been a little bit since I've flown.
So you're on
and
the hiatus, right? Up
little
in
bit.
Michigan
Yeah,
for winter,
it's-
and that's
yep.
terrible.
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of good flying weather up in Michigan in the winter. It's few and far between where we get good days, and they're cold days too. So
Yeah,
I spend.
you mentioned lake effect. Like what was that you were saying? And be very careful because we got a meteorologist.
A meteorologist.
here who
Yeah,
can
you're going to
tell
fact
us-
check me.
I'll pick you apart if you're wrong.
So down in the bottom corner of the state, and I don't, meteorologists can explain it a lot better, but we just get a lot of cloud cover. It's kind of gloomy. So coming here, I get the warmth and the vitamin D. We were just saying that the temperature here is about 4 times what it is at home right now.
Yeah, it's like 20 degrees.
Yeah.
And it was like 60. It's probably high. What was it today?
Today was 83 in El Paso when I left work,
Are you serious?
which is a record high. And that record went all the way back to 1880 something or
damn.
Thank you for saving it for me because it was cold when Travis was here.
1880 something. So well over 130 plus years ago, we set a record of 79, and today we hit 83 officially in El Paso. So yeah, you came here on the hottest day of the year.
Yes.
That's 21 degrees above what it should have been today. The
Wow.
normal should have been 62. That's our normal.
I would have been thrilled with that too.
So I think the reason you enjoyed El Paso so much is because you escaped Michigan weather. And so me and Anthony and Lee, we don't appreciate what we have here because we live in it every day. And if we were coming from a really cold, snowy, cloudy climate and we saw this, we'd like be in love. Right?
Oh, there's plenty to appreciate here for sure, but definitely the juxtaposition of where I stepped on the plane versus getting off was very nice.
The weather out here, it's nice this time of year in El Paso, but come summertime, it's so brutal. It's so hot. So
Yeah, Leandra and I were just talking about that, how like parents visiting in the summer, they're like,
yeah,
don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
When I worked here in Texas with flight training, I was like, I remember it got
Right.
very,
Right.
very hot. And I like having all the seasons, but
Yeah.
I also like the sun.
yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to pick your brain about, aside from the USPPA type stuff, which we'll get into, is how active you've been in attending fly-ins.
I could probably count them. I'm more active going to the Michigan ones lately.
Okay.
I've when I started flying in 2019, it was right up to the time when COVID happened all of a sudden, and I was getting geared up to do fly-ins, and then there weren't as many as there had been because of COVID. So after a little bit of time there, I had a few years where I got to travel a ton, which was fun. And I got to go to a few really cool fly-ins all over the place. And lately it's mostly just been the local Michigan ones. But I've been down to Bad Apples. I went to Salton Sea once. And my favorite part of Salton Sea was getting to go over to Glamis, which is just incredible.
How far is that from, do you remember how
really
far?
far away.
Okay.
I was lucky enough that I was able to fly an airliner down there and borrow equipment from friends, because that would have been easily 3 full long days of driving.
From Scott and Steve over at Midwest Parajet, right?
Yep.
Yeah, good people.
Great guys.
Yeah, you know, the sport really does have some phenomenal people in it, and there's only a few bad eggs.
It really fosters really incredible community. People become really great friends because you have this shared incredible experience. There's a handful of activities that I think people come from when they start to enjoy paramotoring, and a lot of those are camaraderie fostering. Like you get a lot of law enforcement and military, and then other activities like weather guys. Oh yeah.
Well, the truth is, like, I think the demographic, it does tend to be what, like, predominantly 40 or 50-year-old older white dudes. I mean, why is that? Why do you think? I mean, you've got all of the information in front of you because you've got, I think I saw you working on a database today. You've got all
numbers
that stuff. Girl. You're supposed to be here enjoying yourself in El Paso, but you're still busy at work doing all the stuff on the back end that people don't probably see with the USPPA.
Yeah, we're working really hard to make things better, more valuable. I think the group of us, we kind of have I don't know what to call it, like a mantra, I guess, or like vision statement in a way. The USPPA is promote, preserve, and enhance. But right now we're focusing on transparency, consistency, and value. I think those are things that we really got to pay attention to. But so to your first question, who joins this sport? So middle-ish aged males. So if equipment was how it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been physically capable to put on 100+ pound motor and inflate a less efficient glider and go flying. And so that's a great advantage that we have.
Those were warriors back then.
Absolutely. I think it's a mix between it being perceived as attainable, because I think it is extremely attainable, but also the financial portion of it. So people that have gotten to a certain point in life where they have more disposable incomes and maybe their kids are out of the house and they're not paying for activities for them, that we see that a lot with people. They're like, I can finally get into this because I've sent my kids off to college.
That's a good point. I've always noticed how there's like a financial burden to entry into paramotoring. I hadn't really considered I do consider the physical barrier to getting into paramotoring, but I hadn't considered how earlier on, like in its origin days, how difficult paramotoring would have been. I mean, people today struggle with, foot launching, but God forbid, one of our local pilots, Doak Hoover, he gave me like an old paraglider. He's like, hey, here you go. I hope some of your students could use it. And super nice gesture of him. But when I pulled this thing out, this thing was like antiquated, man. This thing was old. And, it's just basically sitting there for the time being. If somebody wants to get into
piece. It's cool to see. Yeah. I love getting to see gliders come into the shop and just figure out like design differences. There's just awesome to see all that.
That's something else
They've come a long way in the last, I've only been in it since 2019, but I see gliders that are older, and like the last 10 years, there's been great advances in making it way more attainable for small people, young people, disabled people.
I think when I met you, it was maybe it was Wauchula, maybe is where I met you from.
Was it?
I think so, but you had the mini mode.
I did. Yeah. So it wasn't the mini mode. It was a mini power to fly LAF.
Oh, okay. Wow, that thing was tiny.
It was
Just like the
tiny.
mini
It
moat.
was deceptive in a way, though, because the weight on it was about the same as a standard size
Right.
Parajet Maverick with an Atom 80.
Oh, wow.
So the advantage on it was basically the ground clearance that it gave for someone with short legs.
Yeah.
And I trained on the Maverick, so I got past the point where I needed that extra height barrier for safety.
Yeah.
With that weight consideration, but it still was an awesome motor. And I was able to sell it recently, and I was really careful when trying to sell it because people will see things online and they want to buy equipment and when they don't necessarily know exactly what they're getting into. And I was like, it's got to go to the right person because it's not going to be the right setup for
It seems
lot of
like a
people.
motor like that, it with it being as small as it is, that it's not a very good setup. I mean, I know Power to Fly. I know that they produce some awesome paramotors. Maybe it was something experimental, but if the weight is that high to be the weight of a Maverick,
Yes.
jeez.
Which
So
you
it
used to
was
have.
what I did like about it was really robust. It was strong. It would take an absolute beating.
Right.
And I know the Maverick's titanium. That frame, it didn't have a round hoop shape. It was more like the kind of like the airfoil style. And that thing, you could drop it, slam it around, and it was going to survive just fine. It wasn't going to get bent. It was very strong. So that's another consideration. When you add more strength to it, it's going to add some weight to it. And so it being the smaller radius hoop frame, it was tough.
And people starting out are almost certainly, you're a flight instructor.
Mm-hmm.
Like butt landings are pretty common for people, especially in the beginning, right? So having
It can be, or picking your feet up
Too
prematurely
early, too
on
early on
takeoff when
takeoff,
you're learning what that timing is. So usually the bottom of the frame scraping the ground, that's not an uncommon thing in some cases.
right. Have you had a chance to try that mini moat?
Yes.
What'd you think of it?
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the articulation. It moved around. It felt much more adjacent to like free flight harness, which is pretty cool.
I flew it. It was, giving it everything it got just to try and get in the air. That was really, really freaking tough. I don't know if I could do it here. I was in Florida, basically at sea level, doing it on a large glider, and still I was running my butt off trying to get that thing off the ground.
It was a little bit of a novelty with my mini motor because people saw it and they just loved it because it was cute and different.
Right.
And so it became the novelty where the bigger guys, they wanted to fly it. So I know David Nickerson and John Isley both flew it. So just to see if it would. And that thing could.
So how did you get into paramotoring?
That's a good question. So I grew up in Colorado. My first aviation job I had there was working customer service at an FBO at an airport.
Yeah.
And I was customer service manager. I had the coolest job and view. I was working with pilots every day. I could see the runway. I could see the mountains.
Did you have family in aviation? Like
I was
what
the
led
first.
you?
I
Why did you want to take that job at the
I
airport?
had some friends that I had gone to high school with one of them, and they worked at the airport, and I'd gone on a flight with them. And it's people in aviation, their families. That's what spurs them to get into it. And it was just way cooler of a job because I was a manager at a Sonic drive-in before then. So being able to go to an airport was quite a step up. It was way cool. And restaurant employees, they have a really good translation into customer service at airports because they're great at service in that way. So jumped into that and I loved that job, but I was going to school for accounting and got the promotion into accounting, which means I got to leave the really cool office with the view and go be put in a cubicle, which turned into like the soul suck. I really didn't enjoy it and did that for a handful of years and decided I was not ready to do that job, live in the house with the dog and settle down. That's not what I was ready for. So remodeled and sold the house and built a van to travel in. And I wanted to fly in aviation. I got a tiny bit of time in an airplane. And
what made you want to? Just the exposure to being at the airport, or?
Yeah, I loved it. And I started flying a little bit in airplanes and it was just so expensive. And I didn't see how I would sustain that. I wasn't going to be a pilot for a career and the application didn't fit, but I loved the act of flying.
Right.
So I kind of put that on the back burner and then was going on this van trip. And the idea during the trip was to do something with the money we made from the house to
Right.
do something in aviation. And the
Right.
plan was initially to do glider sailplane training. The funny thing actually was watching all the different videos online of van builds, trying to get design ideas. I saw a Tucker Gott video where he had a paramotor on the back of his van. I was like, oh, well, that's something like doesn't require medical. It's a lower cost. Like, that's interesting. So I called Aviator at that time, and this is when they were really busy and really popular.
Sure.
And it was January, and they're like, we can get you in a class in December. I was like, nope, never mind. I'll find something else.
Yeah.
So I signed up to do glider sailplane training, and that was going to be in Vermont, I think, in October.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, on the van trip, we went to Oshkosh in July. And I'd been there a handful of times, but it was the first year that I worked there.
Why had you gone a handful of times prior to that?
Aviation's awesome, and that's like
So
mecca for it.
You
I was
had
in aviation.
always been passionate about aviation, because that's what I was like wondering is
Not since I started that job. It was new to me and exciting and fun.
So it was after you started the job that you started going to Oshkosh.
Mm-hmm.
There's generally this difference in passions between men and women, boys and girls, and you have the numbers, and I'd love to hear how few women are actually participating in paramotoring and why that may be. Because some of the questions that we've got from fans of the podcast have to do with the fact that you're a female in paramotoring. But when you go to an airport, what does it make you feel? Like when you see the airplanes coming into land, or if you hear that pilot chatter, does that ever like make you feel giddy when you hear, Camry Airport Cessna 359 Echo Sierra, and it's like you've got this pilot talk.
You realize
special language.
Where I work at an airport all day long, back windows, row windows, I'm seeing helicopters and jets and private, Cub cadets, and everything flying. And all day long, I'm just sitting there going, I can't wait till I get off so I can go fly my paramotor.
Yeah.
And my experience with flying started really, really late. And my whole life as a kid, of course, you're always looking up at every single plane that you see and just saying, wow, that's really cool, right? And you kind of have that dream of flight, but and you always, when I was young, I had dreams of flight every night, it seemed like. But then I had a friend in my office that said, hey, there's a guy in town that trains people how to fly paramotors. And I go, what's a paramotor? Right. And I found out. And when I found out, I said, you know what, I'm a weatherman. I'm a meteorologist. And I teach classes to wildland firefighters all the time about what the air is doing, right? And to me, it's just theory. It's just book learning, and it's me forecasting, but I've never experienced it. So I started training so that I could fly and be lighter than air kind of and feel what the air is doing. And man, I tell you what, it has locked me into the kind of training that I do for other people when it comes to weathers, because I now really do believe that the air does what we prove and what we teach that it does.
Right.
It is amazing. And I tell them I'm a leaf in the wind, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't have that much say over what the weather's going to do to me, and so I have to pick wisely on the days that I fly.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
That's really cool too. Perspective. Like you learned about it, and then you got to feel and apply it.
So I can imagine not very many people, almost probably nobody, got into paramotoring for the reason I did. Powered paragliding, because I said I want to feel the air. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the closest would be Kyle O.
Right.
Because he is like super into weather all the time. And so when I listen to him and we talk, I'm impressed by how much weather he knows. And I'm sure 99% of paramotor pilots don't have that same knowledge.
Right.
And probably should.
Yeah. I mean,
It's hugely useful, and it keeps you safer to understand what could change and how it applies to what our application is.
I think one of the things that I see that I don't know if I say bothers me or frustrates me, is the individuals here that you get out to the field and it's like really strong. And for me, it's a no-brainer. I'd be like, yeah, not going to fly. I'll just sit back and watch if you guys do feel like flying. But I do see a lot of people who have a huge range of what they consider acceptable conditions.
They have more tolerance for less than ideal weather, right?
Right.
And you and I have always been in the same camp where we're a lot more conservative on the conditions that we'll fly in. I don't know what your reason is, but my reason is I have all the meteorological training and I know what the air is doing. And so
Right.
I paint pictures
Right.
in my mind. I create little monsters. Like
Sure.
anytime I get near terrain, I'm like, I know that the air should be doing this. And so I let everybody else sneak up on the mountain first.
Yeah.
And I'm a follower. I'm not a leader. Right. And if I see that they're not taking collapses or anything, I'll say, okay, I'll go test that. So I rarely on my own go to the mountains.
Right.
Unless for some reason you just get up in the air and you feel pretty bold that day, right?
You're drawn to it.
Yeah. And then other days you're like more timid.
Yeah, true. Some days your bump tolerance is higher than other
Yeah.
days. What about you? Or how would you say your bump tolerance is, Alexis?
I feel
Or
like
your-
it's probably pretty good. I think one of my favorite things is during a training session, if the weather's not good enough to send students up for flying, that's my opportunity to get to fly. So that's probably developed my bump tolerance quite a bit because that's my time to be in the air.
Yeah. And I think if you're a wise pilot, you should kind of fly in the fringes a little bit just so you do understand what the capabilities of your glider are and your skills. And then your bump tolerance comes up and you realize you're well within the envelope of safety, but you don't always feel like you are, you know?
Well, and there's very specific choices you should make, but you do that by having that knowledge. So I know if I consider the conditions rowdy, I'm not going to take my advanced glider up because if it does have an issue, it's going to react aggressively and take much more input specifically to correct. So if it is a rowdier day and I'm not worried about the wind speed and being able to like maintain at the field, I'll take up the A glider and still develop those skills, kind of how you described on the fringe. But I think that's probably helped me develop flying because I do typically end up being up when it's a little bit more rowdy, but you have to know where that line is. And I was telling Anthony, a lot of what I try to teach the students is determining your deliberately accepted risk, understanding the situation as fully as possible, knowing that we're humans. So there's going to be holes, there's going to be issues, things are going to happen. And how close to the edge are you willing to be?
Yeah. So you were making phone calls to Aviator PPG and that didn't pan out. So where did you end up going for training?
I ended up going to Lone Star Paramotor.
I've heard of that place.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was at Oshkosh. I was doing aircraft parking, volunteering there. And it was right underneath where the paramotor flight pattern was.
Oh, cool.
And so it had already kind of like sparked my interest.
Yeah.
And then that little area of the aircraft parking had gotten pretty flooded that year. And so we didn't have aircraft for the first few days. So sitting there pretty idle, just getting to watch them the whole time, I was like, I really do want to try this. So I changed my plans. Instead of doing sailplane flying in Virginia, I ended up going opposite side of the country, visited California and some state parks or national parks there, then worked my way down to Texas for training in the hottest September on record.
Wow. And you probably never imagined that you'd be flying at Oshkosh one day, right?
No.
Full circle kind of
It
thing.
is kind of full circle. And I know I guess you asked like if I ever had like aviation background, and I didn't really, but I guess as a kid I had the recurring dream of flying, and it was always like a get yourself out of a situation you don't want to be on the ground. So you can fly away on your own, and it was always like not in an aircraft, but just
Your
flying
body.
away,
Yeah.
being in my own safe spot. And then when I was really little, before like expectations tamped things down, I thought I was going to be an aerospace engineer, and that was more progressively worked into something more realistic, like accounting. So,
Yeah. Right on. So during your training at Lone Star Paramotor, was it as easy or difficult as you had anticipated it to be?
It's a good question. I don't know if I really remember. I think I knew that there was going to be certain things that were hard about it. I know the heat during training was a big factor during that time, and I was still living out of the van, so just cooling off, being rested and hydrating was a big factor during the training. I had already gotten an aircraft dispatcher certificate when I was reconsidering my accounting career. So coming in, I already understood airspace. I understood weather on a macro level. So it didn't quite apply to micro weather, but I came in with a little bit of background, and I've been watching the videos, especially when I decided I signed up and paid that invoice to go to training. So I think I expected the knowledge portion of it to be attainable and the physical portion of it to be difficult.
Right.
Like if I can break in real quick,
Yeah.
for me, I just went full commit, and it sounds like that's what you did too. And it's like I didn't really know if I had expectations on if it would be easy or hard or scary or not scary. I just went in and kind of like had faith that the trainer would keep me safe and I wouldn't die. And anything he said to do, I just went 100 miles an hour in that direction. And what I remember is really struggling the first couple of days with kiting. And I get so freaking frustrated. It's like, this looks like it. Everybody else makes it look easy, and I'm struggling with this.
Right.
The second thing is I remember how sore I was. And I was working out, muscle, with weights and cardio every day. And I was like, this is going to be easy for me because I'm in really good physical shape. And I was like, I cannot believe how sore I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're muscles that we don't really typically use in the same way ever.
Yeah.
And as an instructor, in the back of my mind, when people say like, I am physically fit, and I'm like, this activity tests you in different ways with that. And you can be totally physically fit. You can be able to run a mile fast, and you don't need to be able to do that because that's not where it's difficult.
And I'm sure you get people who call and inquire, and they want to get into paramotoring, but maybe they're later on, it's later on in their life, and they're not the spring chicken that they used to be. And it is a lot more physically demanding than they expected. How do you distinguish, or how do you help somebody make that right choice when you're on the phone with them and they're looking to come to Leading Edge PPG?
That's a good question. I think Justin and I, who run Leading Edge, we don't turn away people who exhibit the desire and the passion for it. And you can hear it and see it when people are coming up to you. If it's something that they're hemming and hawing about and considering, we encourage them, like, we want you to ask questions. We want to answer all these questions. We want you to have like a good prepared mindset, know what you're getting into. And it's also, like you said, the people who aren't as physically fit, whether that's age, disability, fitness level, it's going to be a little bit harder. And one of the things that I think has caused us to have better success as we've gotten better as instructors is we stick with those students. The nice thing is a lot of them come to us from fairly local in our area, the few states around us. And if it doesn't happen in the 10-day program, that doesn't mean it's 10 days and you paid your thing and bye, good luck to you. Because I see our obligation as you signed up to get to a certain proficiency level. And if that takes longer because maybe you need rest time, because a 10-day course is exhausting, or it just wasn't clicking. A lot of times stepping away for a few days, a week, even a weekend sometimes, it gives the rejuvenation and time for things to kind of sink in and physically heal. And it's amazing to see people come back after a little bit of rest and it just clicks, because this is so attainable. It's really, really amazing. So we want people to get to that point where they can enjoy it. And you can't if you're not reaching that certain level of proficiency and you're not confident and capable.
Right.
So you say that, but remember who trained me.
Yeah.
When he left the area, he tried to sell his business to you and to I, right? At different points in time.
Not to me.
Right? Oh, not to you? I thought he also approached you, but he tried to sell it to me. And I was like, and maybe this happened with you when you had your school. Didn't you have somebody that kind of frightened you? You said, I don't trust this person to be safe. And so I really would rather steer myself away from that responsibility. Have you not ever had that? Someone that you just
not
was dead
at Leading Edge, but I think that's one of the jobs of an instructor, is to continually to assess people. It's not just a coach on a radio talking people up into the air. You're kind of a psychologist in the way too, because you're having to pep them up and maybe sometimes tone them down when it's all of that. And this is a mental sport as well as physical. And so it would be a hard and not fun conversation to have, to tell someone like, this just isn't right for you, because I do really genuinely believe that this is so attainable. I've seen so many people who, like, on the fringes of size or weight or physical capability in other ways, that can completely become very proficient pilots and be able to enjoy this. And so it probably would be more of a mindset thing. Like,
Do you trike train too?
Yes.
Okay, so that gives you a wider scope of
Yes.
capabilities for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was on the phone with Ryan Potter, who Mojo's flight school, and one of their instructors, Avery Colburn, is this guy who's super tech savvy, right? And his flying style is incredibly graceful, from what he says. And I guess one of the students was saying, "How do I get to fly like him?" And he said to that individual, "You'll never fly like him. People either have it or they don't." And so I kind of agree that some people truly have a gift when it comes to doing this, just as much as, if your kid wakes up one day and he says, "Mommy, Daddy, I want to be a professional football player." You say, "Dream on, bud." I mean, realistically, you can save the kid a lot of time. I think when people get into paramotoring, I don't think that it's something that anybody can just be really good at. And I even think that there are some individuals who won't be good at it. And if you're not good at it, that's when it can become concerning.
Yes.
I do think that the majority of people can. I think it's one of those things that presents itself pretty quickly if somebody doesn't possess that
I
skill.
agree.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious.
But that's why for me, with the training that I've done, I usually will invite somebody to come out and kite for a day, because I want them to know that they're going to be able to. And that's awesome that with you guys at Leading Edge PPG that you haven't had somebody who just is god awful at flying paramotors. But I think it's well, I guess I have had one really, really bad.
I know where you're going.
I'm not going to be in the NFL.
And you're barely in the sky too.
It's because I'm fat.
Absolutely right. I think it's probably comes down to having a level of coordination and processing speed. Those would probably be where the limitations could come to people who could
It's like
attain
anything. We were
it.
talking about dirt biking today, and you said one of the things that you wish that you had been able to do from a young age was ride dirt bikes. And even if you had done it from a young age, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be good at it.
Sure.
So that's where, like with paramotoring, I know some people within the sport, they're fantastic human beings, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be any good. In fact, it's still one of those things where when you see them get ready to take off, you like tap on your other buddies and you're like, "Hey, check this out."
Are you talking about Clint?
No. There have been people around that if I know they're coming to fly, I won't go fly because I am literally afraid
Of
they're
watching
going to
them
kill
do
themselves,
something.
and I don't want to be there to see.
Yeah.
it. I'm serious. I've done that.
Yeah.
We've never flown together, Tom.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
You might be.
But it was only once, and after that, I said I'm never coming back.
No, I had a student who, I won't say his name. I don't think he'd mind that I don't think that he would mind that I mention this. No, he probably is here. I had a student who I was
Couldn't land.
training with, and he couldn't land. You're
I know.
right.
I was going to mention that earlier.
Yeah. He couldn't land. He struggled so much all the way through training, and it was painful to watch. Like for me, I was totally willing to take as much time with the individual because the truth is I'm not in it for the money. Like, yes, I ultimately want to be compensated for my time. Like, it is extremely time consuming to get somebody in the air. However, watching this individual come into land, it's like when the ground comes rushing up, they get nervous. They may pull the wrong brake. I could be delivering the corrective input to make the entire way, but still, like when you tune out because you're feeling overwhelmed or scared or whatever, that becomes like problematic and scary
And dangerous.
and dangerous.
Yes,
And regardless of how much time, like I don't consider myself to be a bad instructor by any means. I think that, for the most part, I can connect with people. I'm patient, I'm calm, and I thoroughly enjoy the process of seeing somebody learn how to fly. That said, I don't know. I think that that's not typically the case. I think that most people can grasp hold of the concepts that are required in order to be able to safely fly. But on occasion, there are going to be some people who just shouldn't fly.
Yeah,
and that's
sure.
that's
And you're
not
right.
taking into consideration people's feelings. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like,
Yeah.
I do. I absolutely agree with that. And
Yeah.
to your specific situation, if someone's not able to overcome that fear,
yeah,
that they get in that situation, they're not going to fully enjoy it
Right.
and be safe pilots and be able to process if something were to change in their situation,
Right.
something were to malfunction. Because like I said, there's always multiple pieces to things, and we can decide to ride right on the edge. And if you're already fearful, you're putting yourself on the edge of where things are dangerous because your reaction speed and your reactions are going to be inhibited.
Just
But if-
locking up, right?
Yeah.
I also think that paramotoring is overall very simple.
Yeah.
Like, I don't actually think that it's dangerous as long as you're the average person.
Right.
It's just a matter of somebody being honest with themselves. Once you learn the controls, paramotoring can be super, super simple. I mean, think of our controls, right? We've got up, down, left, and right.
Yep.
Managing that at a 25 mile per hour pace is not that difficult. I mean, for the average person. But I think it's when fear takes hold of somebody. For me, when I got into flying, like, I don't know how it was for you, but for me, I was so scared at times that I knew it was interfering with it, and I had to kind of like calm myself down at times. And ultimately, I went on to become the world's greatest paramotor pilot.
Number one.
It took some more.
Numero uno.
You
Yeah.
never felt scared?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when people see that I fly paramotors, it's so foreign and different to them that their reaction's like, oh, that's so crazy and dangerous. And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like family members of someone who wants to join training, because we'll go to events and we'll talk to people. And one of the things I commonly say to ease it, and I think I told you earlier, but it's twofold. So one, usually the drive to the field to go fly is statistically more dangerous than the flying itself. And also it's like riding a dirt bike on a track all by yourself. You can pick your level of
How hard.
aggressiveness. How
Right.
hard are you going to go? And that's what a lot of people enjoy about it. They can go up and they can make it calm and smooth, and it can be that relaxing,
If the weather's
enjoyable
good.
thing with the right decisions made.
Right.
Yeah. Or you can go up and you can make it aggressive and you can get your adrenaline pumping. Like you've got the gamut of that with
Sure.
what we have. So it can be very safe, and it's pilot decision that creates those levels in it. And so that's
You're
so
doing
nice.
this all wrong. When someone comes up to you and say, I can't believe you do that, you say, yeah, it's dangerous
Uncool.
AF, and I'm a badass. That's what you say. And then when you're talking to your mom, you go, it's the safest thing I've ever done. And then your mom says, please don't tell me before you're flying, tell me when you get down.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
my mom always used to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I get it. I think it's something that, can totally be as safe as you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to upgrade your paramotoring game? Look no further than Fly Products USA, the leader in innovative and reliable paramotoring equipment. Fly Products crafts some of the most advanced and well-engineered paramotors and trikes on the market, designed for pilots of all experience levels. Whether you're after the lightweight power of the Eclipse, the rugged versatility of the Rider, or the stability of their world-renowned trike systems, Fly Products delivers performance and durability that you can count on. Their designs prioritize safety, comfort, and ease of use so you can focus on enjoying your time in the air. One of the best parts? Fly Products USA's exceptional customer service. Having owned several Fly Products paramotors myself, I can tell you it's unlikely you'll need much after your purchase. These machines are built to last. But when you do need support, it's reassuring to know you're backed by a company that genuinely cares about its customers. Their team is knowledgeable, responsive, and ready to help with anything that you need. So why choose Fly Products? Because you're not just buying a paramotor, you're investing in proven performance, cutting-edge innovation, and outstanding support. Check out flyproductsusa.com today to explore their full lineup and discover why pilots around the world trust Fly Products to take them higher. That's flyproductsusa.com. Your journey starts here. So you went from, building up some skills. What came next? Was it joining the Airythmia
Yes,
flight
it
demonstration
was.
team?
So I guess trying to remember all the sequence of everything. So that was like the next big step, which was kind of cool. I was moving from Texas up north,
Right.
and I got invited to be a part of the team, which was really exciting. The team's there. We don't do aerobatics. We don't flip around. The whole idea of it was to show that it's accessible. We're bringing this
There's
form
no
of aviation.
acro
You don't
in
fly
your
inverted?
performances?
No.
No inverted
No.
flips.
I'm not that cool.
Isn't Kyle Mooney on this team?
He sure is.
But he doesn't do any crazy stuff. He's
That's
super
not the
skilled.
purpose of the team.
But he does. Come on.
Yeah.
He throws down a little bit.
He throws down, but not during the shows.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I've actually never seen one of the performances. I would have assumed, since there's this super skilled, not to say that you're not, but Kyle Mooney's like on another planet of skill with paramotoring, right?
So it's just a bunch of synchronized flying, right?
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
That's the
lights
purpose
and-
Yeah,
of
it's like
the
formation
team.
flight.
and formation.
It's formation
Yeah.
flight.
Like the
yeah,
Thunderbirds.
so
Like y'all know the Thunderbirds.
nothing fun. Yes, very cool. We're so cool like that.
The snowbirds. They're the snowbirds.
Yeah. So the point of the team was to show that it's accessible and attainable
Right.
and fun. We don't want to throw down and scare people.
Yeah,
We want
yeah.
them to be inspired to
Yeah.
want to enjoy this form of aviation. And it's cool because we've got people of different ages. We've got males and females on it. We've had trikes and foot launch on it. So we're trying to
Be an ambassador.
Be an
Yeah,
ambassador.
to the sport.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. And that's how you grow the sport.
I can say though that the more we've added to our show, the equipment is getting really heavy.
What do you mean?
Adding lights
Oh,
and
oh,
smoke and
and fireworks and all that.
the goodies. So
Yeah.
I wanted to weigh our equipment last time, but didn't end up doing it. But I'd be curious to see weight, because all of ours weigh the same amount pretty much, and I'm short.
I wonder what it's like getting your foot in the door at an event like Oshkosh as a paramotor crew, because
Usually we say like, why did they let us in here? 'Cause
Yeah.
we're like the skate punks in the
Really?
aviation community.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah.
this really cool picture where it's us at one of the events that we did. It was flying at Wings Over Batavia in New York, and we're getting our equipment set up, and we're right next to the Red Bull airplanes and the Red Line
That's so
guys,
cool.
and it's just the really truly incredible and amazing pilots that are there. Like I feel totally out of my league being able
Yeah.
to stand next to them
you
in
say
this
I'm
hangar.
a pilot too.
I don't.
I know. Thank you. Are we pilots? See, now you're on the line. You are the president of the USPPA.
I
Are we
call
pilots?
myself a pilot.
Okay, there you have it. It came from
I
a horse's
fly.
mouth.
I fly. I'm in the air. Paragliders are pilots.
You're right.
Hang gliders are
You're right.
pilots.
I just have a hard time, and I like
It is
we've had
different.
conversations with Jeff Goyne about this, and Jeff
What was
Goyne,
his position?
what did he say? Do you remember Jeff Goyne? What did he say?
One thing he said was the hardest thing in all of aviation is a no-wind forward launch on
That's
a paramotor.
right. So does that
Correct.
make us pilots because
I
of
think
that?
he did clarify that we are pilots.
Well,
Nice.
damn.
From his mouth.
That means we can get boats and do that too, right? Pilot a boat.
Then we're captains.
Oh, captain pilots.
It's different now. No pilots there.
Have you ever done really cool things like baby reveals and stuff like that, gender reveals and stuff like
I
that?
haven't. I did get the opportunity recently to fly at a funeral, which was really special. So one of the airports in our area, Maurice, I could be wrong, but he was like 93, 94 years old.
Yeah.
And any Ford trimotor that's out there flying, he had his hands on.
Oh, wow.
And he has a facility where he has all the Ford machining equipment. So not only can he refurbish and fix trimotors, he could manufacture them.
Yeah, but that's nothing like what you do, fixing
Nothing like
gliders,
what I do.
right? How? So how you are one of the few individuals who can repair paramotor paragliders, right?
I guess there's not a ton of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's what you can probably count them on one hand, probably.
Probably two, because if you consider like the people
let's
in the
go.
paragliding.
Start-
Okay, so there's
The
Elizabeth, the legend,
The
who I
legend.
learned from. So
Right.
down Paratour, Eric's wife in
Right.
Florida. Michelle Danielle, who now she focuses on line replacements, creating glider lines.
Is that line in a day?
Yes.
All right.
Yep. So Paramotor City lines in a day. That's Michelle. Right. Elizabeth, she's focusing solely on repairs now. So she doesn't want to do the inspections anymore. She, in the last 2 years, taught Andrew Fuller, so Skylab, and I how to do the repairs. Right. I know there's Cloud9 in Utah. I know there's Superfly in Utah. Superfly will do the gliders that they sell, so Advanced Gin and Nova.
Okay.
I know there's AirQuest Paragliding, who I send to get my reserves repacked. He does repairs, and so I know there's a few other paraglider places that can and will handle paramotor equipment.
Okay. Yeah. So
I'm sure I'm missing some. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So what was that like? Getting into, because Clint, you would know this, better than anything. The USPA, which is the United States Parachute Association, is a lot more strict, and we're going to get into that question being the purpose of the USPPA. In skydiving, it's pretty obvious. You're not getting your ass on a plane unless you have your license. But Clint here is a banker.
Investment advisor with JP Morgan. Little firm down the street.
And so the USPA is super, super strict on riggers.
What'd you call me?
Riggers.
Yes,
riggers
you have to repack your reserve every 180 days. They won't let you into the drop zone or on the plane without the USPA membership, license, check your logbook, check your rigger seal on your reserve. It's a lot more organized and structured than when I started with powered paragliding and the USPPA. It's like you can just go do it. No license, no credentials.
In order to become a individual who can work on parachutes in the skydiving world, that's pretty freaking strenuous too, right? They have to undergo
it's an FAA exam
regulated
for senior and then master rigger.
Right. But here in the powered paragliding world, it's like a trust thing. So the community has to have a lot of trust that Alexis Quintana, which you're obviously a very trustworthy person, and we're just hoping that Elizabeth Dufour, right, is making the right choice in who she has as her little grasshopper coming up in filling her boots.
Yep. The whole idea, the USPPA mission is preserve, promote, and enhance. The most special thing about our activity is that we don't have to go jump through all these hoops. We don't need to hold medicals. We don't need to have registration. We are free to do this activity as long as we are not potentially harming the non-participant. That is one of the best things about the way our regulations have been written. Now, the FAA did write in the regulations, FAR 103, in the advisory circle, so 103.7, that it is up to us to figure out a way to self-regulate because they don't want to have this oversight over it. We're too small of a population of people for them to enforce. And what the rules were written for when they were written in the 80s, they didn't even encompass what currently exists as an ultralight today. So there's a lot of potential issue with that because things that are considered ultralights, that encompasses us, but that encompasses a lot of fixed wing too.
Everything you're talking about, there is no distinction as far as regulations go from paramotoring versus, like a ultralight, like a Quicksilver, right? It's all clumped into one.
We have the same single sheet of paper front and back as our rules. And all the rules say, they basically dictate, they do dictate things like fuel capacity, speed, whatnot, but primarily
times
the idea
is
times a day. But the general idea is that we are not going to cause an issue to someone else. So the USPPA's purpose is to preserve that freedom. Now, the question usually is, so if I don't have to have a rating, if I don't need certification, why do I care to be a part of the USPPA?
Right.
And as an early instructor, I did not like the fact that my best answer to that question was that basically being a sheep benefits us all. So perspective, I'll just throw out round numbers for convenience. If there's 5,000 paramotor pilots in the entire country and 500 of them are members of the USPPA.
That's how many there are?
Nope, just round numbers for example purposes.
Is that the percentage?
Nope.
No,
so,
not even that?
But
Okay.
hypothetically.
Okay.
So 5,000 paramotor pilots, if only 500 are members of the USPPA, FAA, if they decide that there's an issue, they could look at that and be like, well, USPPA isn't really serving as like an overall entity to help self-police this this entity, so we're going to have to step in and take care of it. Now, 4,500 of the 5,000 are actively part of this organization, then they will listen to what the USPPA has to say more. So in that sense, it's like mass assimilation helps us potentially protect our freedoms if the FAA were to come knocking. And that's not a good enough reason for a lot of people, because people want to know what's in it for themselves. What are my membership dues going for? What do I get? And that's important. And we're different from other organizations. We don't have to hold a rating to be allowed access into the airplane. We don't have to hold a rating to be able to go on the paragliding launch site. We have the freedom to launch from our personal property. So the purpose of the USPPA is we want to preserve these freedoms, but we need to figure out a way to do it where individual members are getting personal benefit from the organization. So it's no longer a question where it's valuable enough that you want to be a part of the organization. And then that ultimately serves the whole community as well.
I think that's something that Noah Rochetta did a good job introducing with the Paramotor magazine, being that was something now tangible that somebody was able to receive in return. I assume prior to that, it was blog posts that, or just articles that Jeff Goyne would write. And don't get me wrong, Jeff is a super brilliant person and a talented writer, amongst many other things. But yeah, I think having that magazine, that the USPPA to me feels like it makes it official. Like there's this.
There's tangible something to
I mean,
it.
It kind of just gives the sport this reputation of being official as opposed to just something that is kind of like quirky and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I believe you're right. I think that NOAA did a really fantastic job offering some of that higher, more modern legitimacy to the organization by getting the website design updated and by reinstituting this magazine, which were really, really great first steps, but that's not where it can stop. We got to keep going and find how, because not everyone's going to want that magazine. And a lot of the things that we see in the organization, some of the big advantages to being a part of the USPPA, they don't really come into play until you reach different levels. And a lot of people, they just want to fly individually. If you're not looking to compete and you don't need the PPG2, then why do you care?
Yeah, so
if you're not looking to do tandems and you're not looking to be an instructor, if you just want to fly for yourself, why do you care to be a USPPA member or hold ratings?
I understand the instructor rating and the value behind being a USPPA instructor. What's this competition thing? Like when you go to, what is it, like a fly-in that there's...
No, so competition is something that we're trying to bring to the U.S. more because international paramotor competition is big. Like there's a lot going on with
like
it.
Slalom,
and one of the, slalom, there's multiple things, classic competition.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the USPPA allows pilots to do is, in order to compete at these international events, you have to have an FAI sporting license. In order to get that license, your national organization has to basically recommend you. And our national liaison to the FAI is NAA, National Aerobatic Association, I believe. I'm really upset if I got that wrong.
Yeah, no worries.
And so USPPA is affiliated and a member of the NAA. So that allows us, for PPG2 pilots and above, they can get that FAI sporting license and compete internationally, which is cool. But that also means this last year that applied to 3 pilots. And we're really proud that we had Leah and Johnson and Jill go compete internationally. And this is something that's great for the U.S. in general, internationally. But it's a benefit that the USPPA has that it only serves a few people. And so we want to focus on how's the everyday flyer benefit.
What I was going to ask, you talked to preserve, protect, and enhance, right? So you've talked about preserve and protect a lot, but the enhance part is what are y'all thinking on that part of the equation?
There's several things. And one thing that I loved about a conversation we had before your accident, you asked me about the incident database. And you said you did research before doing skydiving.
Yeah.
So how did that help you?
Yeah, no, a ton. Before I committed to getting into skydiving, I wanted to know if it was safe, and the database that clearly documents how an incident unfolded gave me peace of mind that I can avoid that thing, or like basically going through them one by one to make sure that it was something. But I must not have had the database.
It gives you a sense of control, right? You get a sense of control.
And
saying,
understanding.
These are the things to
For some
avoid.
people, they don't want to jump into something until they feel like they have a more full understanding
picture,
of what they're undertaking. So
Right.
handful of things. We want the incident database to not be something where it feels like we're ratting out
Yeah.
our peers. We want it to be a useful and informative tool.
Is my crash in the database?
It's not, and I was going to call you out on
I was
that.
going to say, won't that?
What? It's supposed to be self.
Yeah, I was going to say,
submitted?
how is it going to be
It's not.
complete? How is it ever going to be complete?
That's a good question. And
we
so
are-
this is something that I was just brainstorming with Justin is one, there's a lot of shame involved when you do run into an incident. And two, what is considered an incident? So it's going to be overwhelming if every time someone breaks a prop, that needs to be put in the database.
Yeah.
And so I
That's-
think
that's
if
a lot.
It
we're
would just be irrelevant.
It
Like it's
would
not
be.
benefiting anybody.
It would have to be injury of
right,
some sort, right?
yes.
Not
so
equipment.
what Justin, he had such a great idea with it. If we were
You're
to look
biased.
at, I am biased.
You
If
like
we
this
were,
guy. I can
like
tell.
him. Yeah. If we were to look at our regulations and what we're being looked at, we're supposed to protect the non-participant, right? So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
the qualifier for something reaching the incident database did it impact a non-participant?
Yeah.
Did it impact someone else's property, or did it cause bodily injury? I think those could be, and maybe this is not a fully fleshed out idea, but those are three qualifiers that make it easier to determine when things should be submitted to the database. And I think it should be, it should happen. Like, it doesn't need to be the person who had the incident that happened. If you observe it, like, the purpose of it is so we can learn from. And unfortunately, in some ways, rules in aviation are written in blood. And I think it's valuable to learn lessons from when things happen so that they don't have to happen again. Make a learning tool out of it.
So knowing that your accident is not in the database, my question to you is, will I get a reward if I turn in that information?
$50.
I'll send you a
$50
gold star and a t-shirt.
$50 gift card to the.
I've got USPPA stickers here.
Okay, I'll take one. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
and how do
You're
you?
getting written up.
Good. So I'm wondering, like, how do you keep some sort of level of consistency within this form submission? However, the incidents get reported. You know, you can't have Joe Schmo writing one and then this other person with a completely different writing style, right? You want to,
Correct.
You know,
So I think
form, right?
ultimately it needs to turn into a form that it ends up being reviewed, because if it's people
and
submitting,
maybe one person like rewriting it, so there's a level of
or
consistency.
a team of people, yeah. So
Yeah.
it needs to not just be the third person or first person story of an incident. It needs
Right.
to have the points to it.
What matters.
What were the causes? Because
The
as we
weather,
know in
the
it, there's
equipment.
never just one cause to a catastrophic incident.
Will you look
There's
up the USPA?
the database.
No, you just put it in. Yeah, look up the USPA database and see like what
How it's
specifically what they're
organized.
capturing
Yes.
in that.
So
And
it
then-
needs
and
to
then
be
let
a
us know when it
tool.
comes
Like
out. Yeah, the skydiving one.
I don't feel
Well,
like
is
it
it-
needs
doesn't-
to be like name of person and equipment
No,
they were using
no.
necessarily, unless that was a
contributing
cause.
factor.
Shame,
Maybe a
shame,
contributing
shame,
factor.
shame.
Yeah, it shouldn't be shameful. It should be a learning
Right.
tool. So if we can take the information that's submitted in the database and turn it into a useful thing and searchable thing, like what were the contributing factors and how can you avoid it? All of a sudden, it turns from this shameful tattletale blog to something that's genuinely useful and enhancing for the community.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's super neat. I think that's
Searchable, most common search, Anthony Valley.
yeah,
Anthony
probably.
Anonymous. Like, it doesn't need to have someone's name on it because that's shameful, right?
I wonder who they're talking about. The person yelled 48 miles per hour. Shit.
So I think there's a handful of things that we're working on. So incident database, that is an education tool, or if we can turn it into an education tool, that enhances it. I don't want people to come to a field to fly and worry about the guy that's setting up next to them is someone that you don't want to fly next to. So elevating the level of training that's available and creating some more consistency with what people receive. I know anyone can say that they're a paramotor instructor, but if you want to be a USPPA paramotor instructor, I want that to mean something, and where prospective pilots who are trusting this name can come in and expect to learn certain levels of things and attain certain levels of proficiency. So I think there's many different ways where we can help make everyone safer in a way or enjoy the sport more. And we were working on making competition more widely present in the US. So I think there's a lot of things. We want people to be able to fly and enjoy it, and not just enjoy it for a little while, but long term.
Right.
Yeah, I think there is a hill to climb with all that, because we're a bunch of renegades, right? Like you just mentioned, and I told you earlier, I fly from my front yard and from a field right next to my house, and so I need nobody's permission whatsoever. And I'll be honest with you, until until Anthony told me you were coming, I didn't even know, because I got certified so long ago. You didn't exist. It was the USHPA. I got my P1 and P2, and then over time, kind of like dropped it over time. Not on
so
purpose.
that's the
So it's like
struggle. It's like
you
the
need to make
main-
yourself known first, and then promote the benefits of it. And so that's where I find myself at right now.
Right.
I think one thing that would make it very, very clear to you that there's value in it. So, like I said, the majority of the people that are members are the ones that fly for themselves. They're not instructors. They're not tandem. They're not competition pilots. They want to take off from their front yard
You're
and
describing
enjoy getting
me.
in
Yeah,
the air.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, say all of a sudden the USPPA was able to offer insurance options for PPG 2 rated or above pilots.
Exactly.
You probably find out about that really quick, and all of a sudden there's more value
Sure,
to
yeah,
the organization for you. So I think there's a lot of things we're trying to brainstorm and make happen so that the value of it trickles down to the everyday flyer, because that's the majority of the people in our realm without it. Yeah.
And that's another level of protection for our sport to continue to exist. And I think most pilots be willing to chip in to do that.
Sure.
Okay, just to kind of go over it. This is SIM. What does SIM stand for?
Skydiver Information Manual, maybe?
Skydiver Information
For
Manual
300?
says an incident that should be reported includes any event that requires medical attention or raises a safety concern. But other incidents that should be reported include noteworthy malfunctions, unsafe procedures, unusual or ethically unacceptable skydives, or other extraordinary occurrences concerning skydiving operations. Incident reports are warranted for the following, but not limited to: fatalities, injuries requiring medical attention more than local first aid, and injuries of a solo or tandem student, so students particularly, reserve deployments. Hey, that's something we can certainly have in our sport. AAD activations, which is automatic activation device. Is that right? Yep. And then off-field landings or obstacle landings. I wonder if that would be relevant, like landing in places that were unintentional.
I think that doesn't pose as much of a significant thing to us because like skydivers are centered around airfields and they have a designated landing site, whereas there's ways for us to fly in smart ways even if we're not landing where we intend to. We can always fly over areas that are landable without it being an incident.
Right. And it's probably...
I love that list. It's very thought out. I think one of the things we really look towards are how other organizations have handled certain things, whether it's incident database, whatnot. So we look to other national organizations for skydiving, paragliding, hang gliding, or international organizations, because we're a relatively small community of people, U.S. paramotor pilots that our organization represents, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel with everything. We can look to the big brothers and of organizations and learn from them and step off of where they created certain systems.
Right. One of the things that we do at the Paramotor Podcast is we ask for our fans and supporters to head on over to patreon.com/Anthony Vella. It's totally free to sign up, but that is where you have the opportunity to ask our guests questions. And we did that with you, and we got a lot of questions that came in. So Jeremy Ho, is that how you say his name?
Howe.
Jeremy Howe. So Jeremy Howe asked a question. He said, how much does the team get paid? Okay, this is a multi-part question. Where do my membership dollars go? And is there a cool magazine article on this topic?
Yes, there certainly is. So Jeremy, he is our past treasurer. So you brought up Ryan.
Right.
Ryan is our current treasurer who just started his term in January. And Jeremy was the treasurer the 2 years previous to that.
Yeah.
So as far as what USPPA board members get paid, we don't. We don't get paid. So there are
Really?
3
Wow.
paid professionals that the USPPA employs. It's our website developer, our magazine editor, and our membership administrator. So those are our 3 paid people, and then everyone else is a volunteer. So whether it's the 4 board members, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, our 4 training committee members, all the other volunteers and committee chairmen, we're all volunteer based. And I know I was telling some of the board, I was like, especially the last 3-4 weeks, I think I've put more hours into USPPA work than paid work. So I gotta, the goal ultimately is to turn these positions into good rolling systems so that it's attainable for future volunteers to step in and help continue a trajectory, because it's not something that people want to sacrifice their paid jobs for. So no, we don't get paid, but it's fun to contribute. Where my membership dollar goes, there's multiple things that the organization pays for. The 2 primary biggest cost items for the organization are operating the website and distributing the magazine. Jeremy wrote a really awesome article where he took the per person membership rate and kind of broke it down into pie segment chunks to show where each dollar spent goes and where we're spending it on, which is a great picture of where things are going. And Ryan, the current treasurer, he has been working a lot on some more continued analysis where we're figuring out retention and how long people are members, where more specifically those dollars are going, either per membership or as the organization as a whole. So that's all stuff that's really informative for us in helping make decisions, seeing where maybe dollars should not be spent so they could best serve the community, or where things are being effective. And we've done very small surveys to the community to see what they want, what they enjoy. And there's been really widespread for the magazine, and that being such a big cost factor, that's one of those things we have to seriously consider, so that it's all really good information in the article he wrote and stuff for us to be aware of.
Right. Yeah. No, it's super well produced. Have you seen the magazine?
No, honestly, I haven't.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I've seen it on the web. I haven't had it in my hand, but I have seen it on the web.
Version?
So yeah, I have seen it.
Yeah, super high quality, really, really well done. That was Noah. Did he come up with that?
So there had been a magazine before. So Noah basically reinstituted it, and we reinstituted it with issue 1 because it had been a long time, and he did a fantastic job. And hiring Liz, our editor, she does amazing. She also edits for other organization magazines, so kind of like Cousin Sports for us.
Right.
And then our printing company. So I agree. It's a quality production.
Yeah. A similar question submitted by Allie Yancey. She's a flight instructor at One Up Adventure. Incredible
and our current
person.
Secretary.
And the current secretary. Funny to see that she asked this question. She says, what does the finance situation look like at the USPPA?
So that is something that is a serious concern for us. For a long time, we had long-standing regular members and low overhead because we weren't running a magazine. The website kind of just operated as it was, and the primary expense that we had was Kristen, our membership administrator, because she gets paid to stuff the envelope, send the rating cards out, go online and attach your rating when you earn one. So now that we've added the magazine and the website, which have been very high cost items, the cushion that the organization has or had is decreasing. So we've got money to use, but it's one of those things that we have to seriously consider and be aware of, because we need to be liquid. We got to survive basically so that we can keep serving. And so adding a lot of the value items that we're thinking about, it's balancing the cost associated to it with making it valuable enough that people want to be members so that we can continue to serve.
Are there as many paramotor pilots this year as there were 3 years ago?
So the membership rate, Ryan was just distributed the board a little bit of a report that went to 2023. And since then, we have had some dwindling in membership numbers.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it'd be really nice to be able to look farther back in history, because I was curious, like what would be the membership numbers come COVID time? Because I know that was actually a time where we increased in pilots in the country because people had this free time and they were at home more. And then I know just from working and instructing that there's ebbs and flows in what people joining the sport. Those numbers are economic changes in the industry. So because of the way the website has been run and the history in it, we've got a lot of things that we're trying to improve and make better in that. Our history and good solid numbers are harder to detect before 2023, but there has been a little bit of a dwindling in membership.
Do you think that there's a dwindling in active pilots in the United States? I know a lot of people who, I mean, just as far as our local community goes, it's decreased. And I mean, individuals don't seem to be as active as they were in past years.
That's really hard to say. I know my community in Michigan, we're growing. We've got a lot more pilots. I know Justin talks about when he started flying over a decade ago, he was like, there was 12 of us. And now there's pockets of 12 people all over the place.
Right.
So I know those ebbs and flows, they're normal in every little area. They're going to go up and they're going to go down. But that's one of the things that USPPA has a hard time assessing, because there's no obligation to become a member. And we probably could get, I mean, it would be a task, but to get manufacturer, like distributor numbers, but it would be more difficult to do. And I know there's some people who have multiple motors, multiple wings, and there's plenty of used equipment out there. So those would be pretty hard numbers to determine, just sole pilot number. It's not like skydiving where there's headcount on an airplane and ratings issued.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you actively, knowing all this, how are you actively trying to introduce yourself to the community and then recruit more members? Have you come up with strategies on that?
So one of the things that we're trying to do with the website is make that an optimized first point of contact. If we can make that, like, if someone is interested in powered paragliders, more than likely their local school might pop up in their Google search. If the USPPA is that first point of contact and we can give good, valuable information that as an organization, all the leaders have decided that's good information, like that we can assess and control some of that a little bit and then help improve the value in it. But it's quite a feat to try to manage.
Like a social media footprint.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say social media and
is
also
huge.
content, because it's like, you know, legitimately organizations, it's just like marketing and anything. Like, if you want the thing to grow, you need to put it out before the eyes of individuals and entice them to get into it. And so, I mean, has there ever been conversations? What do these meetings look like where, you know, as you said, there's these three things, the triangle, the organization is doing to promote, aside from the magazine, right? Because the magazine
goes to current membership.
Yeah.
So that is one of those things that is difficult, because we know that our content will reach the current community, the current established membership.
Sure. So what are some
we
of the
have talked
ideas?
about social media. So we have a big push recently to have regular posts on social media, and we're working on strategies to make them valuable, because the posts that are going to see the most people are the ones that are interesting enough that they get shared and they get commented on, right? So that's a big point of discussion that we've had. So
How many
we're working
followers are
on-
there of the USPPA on social
I should
media?
not. I don't know that. I should maybe
No. I mean,
on Facebook or Instagram, but
I can
not as many
bet
as
it's.
we maybe should.
I was going to say I can bet it's not that many, and it's the
Correct.
same thing. It's like these businesses, when they don't have a huge audience, they turn to the people who already have established audiences,
Right.
and then
Which
put
is
it
one
before
great
their
reason
eyes.
why to be here.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is going to help answer a lot of questions for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I mean, beyond that, I think that if there are individuals who are actively flying, I'm not one of them, but if there's people who are actively flying, in partnering up with them and trying to say, hey, can you like plug the good things that we're doing to try and entice people to set up those memberships? Because to me, it seems like a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a difficult sell. I mean, aside from this awesome magazine, which that alone is kind of worth it. I really like that.
Sure, but that can't be the only benefit that people have.
No, but I think the instructor rating thing is kind of like, hey, if your ass ever gets, pulled to court because something went wrong, you're going to want to be able to say that you were a certified instructor.
But that still doesn't serve the everyday flyer. So you're right.
Correct.
But
Right.
reaching more people that would our membership would consist of. So I guess one answer to that question is, I know that us on the Airythmia team, we're flying on these very largely viewed platforms, and that's one of the things that we talk about is we're here, we fly powered paragliders, this is attainable, it's fun, it's amazing.
Right.
And USPPA is a resource. We're all USPPA instructors in schools, and this is a place to go to find information. So
Right.
that's probably the largest platform I can think of that I'm very intimately involved with in front of people who are not already involved in our community, but maybe are on that adjacent interest spectrum. Because a lot of the people who end up joining paramotoring or jumping into paramotoring, I mentioned it was like law enforcement and military before, but there's also adjacent hobbies. So it's pilots, RC pilots, scuba divers, motorcycle riders.
Sure, yeah.
So those are all activities
Exactly.
that people do that really well translate into this.
I
I
was
think
gonna say.
reaching those communities is valuable.
Have you spent years watching others soar through the sky, wishing that it could be you? Make this year your year to stop watching and start flying. At Mojo's Flight School, we've been turning dreams into reality since 2013, helping aspiring pilots across the southeastern United States experience the thrill of paramotoring firsthand. Mojo's Flight School is a USPPA certified flight school with a team of instructors and 3 training locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, Greensville, South Carolina, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We specialize in nil wind instruction, so you know that you can fly anywhere when you start here. Every student learns and progresses differently, and we get that. That's why we offer unlimited training, ensuring you feel confident and comfortable before your first solo flight. You don't join a class, you join a school. No rushing, no pressure. Just an unforgettable pilot experience at your pace. Whether you want to foot launch, fly on wheels, or master both, we've got you covered. We're also a one-stop shop for all your gear needs. We specialize in light, durable equipment, so we offer paramotors from MacFly, PAP, and Kanguk, and wings from APCO, BGD, and Jin. We will help you find the best setup for you, no matter your budget or flying style. We're ready to get you off YouTube and into the sky, so mention the Paramotor Podcast and get $200 off your training. Let's make this an unforgettable year and start your powered paragliding journey with Mojo's Flight School. Visit mojosflightschool.com for more information or find us on social media at Mojo's Flight School to start your adventure today. I got a great question from a guy named Cody Belrose. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He says, hey, Alexis and Anthony and Tom. He didn't know Tom was going to be here. I'm curious. You didn't either. I'm curious if the USPPA has ever had to fight with the FAA to allow PPG pilots in the United States to not require a pilot's license. I assume that has not really been a fight. I'm going to
Not for us, but it has for other similar crafts, so PPCs.
Okay.
So powered parachutes, they were much more similar to us in regulation. And I don't know the time that happened, but after certain issues, and I should get my history better, but I do believe it had to do with taking passengers up and having incidents and accidents that involved that non-participant, basically, what our rules are meant for. And then their regulations were increased to more like a sport pilot level. They need registration. They need pilot certificates for that. So we've run into that in the country with other similar activities, not yet with paramotoring. And that's something that could come. And with
so that serves as a warning to the whole community. Is
and
not
I think
knuckleheads.
I think FAR 103 is delicate. Like I mentioned, it's not just paramotors that fall into that. There's a lot of other things that are very high powered and high performance that fall into that same category. And it might not be a viral paramotor YouTube video that raises the red flag. It could be another thing that falls into that ultralight category that raises the red flag to FAA and causes them to either split it up into different categories, increase regulation in general, but it's something to be aware of the potential. The fact that our regulations haven't changed since the 80s or ever since they were written is special and not common.
Yeah. See, Cody's from Canada. And you saw it?
I saw it.
Okay. And not only Canada, but the United Kingdom, they are much more strict when it comes to getting to fly a paramotor. Here,
most other countries
America, we got freedom.
We are
freedom,
very
brother.
special here that we have the freedoms that we do. Most other countries have more regulations.
Right.
I know,
Oversight, all
and
that stuff
whether
is
it's
strict.
the way we fly or it's the glider inspections. I don't need to have a certification FAA license to inspect and repair gliders, whereas in some other countries you do, and it must be done every year, whether you fly at 2 hours or 200 hours.
I think that our FAA has gotten this right, because it seems like an American value to be able to fly something so long as it does not pose a risk to bystanders or anybody else on the ground. It just seems like it should be innate within every American to be able to go and fly.
It is a very American thing, I think.
If you're not hurting anybody else, no one should tell you not to do it. Plain and simple.
And in general, I think the way we break it up in training is we basically have 10 big rules that govern us, and they're outlined in most of the big ones are to not endanger the non-participant, but there's a few others that include when to fly, how much fuel you can carry, and what we have is so special. They're 10 rules. Just abide by the few rules that we have and enjoy what we have.
Maybe. I've always wanted to fly at night.
Yeah.
Well,
the other cool thing with our activity
is the exemption. Don't say it.
Yes.
Don't say the exemption. I've heard it's a total pain in the butt to try and get it. It's kind of one of those situations. I talked about it with Kyle O'Glee, and he and I hope he doesn't mind that I'm putting him out there. I was telling Kyle O'Glee it would be great to go out to the desert where it's like 100 miles from the next living person. And why not? Mm-hmm. Why not just go out there and fly at night? You have some people who will say, you're going to risk our sport. It's like, well, not if you're not posting it online. And if you, imagine you're out there. It's a beautiful full moon night. You got it. Yeah. You got it. You think about it, how wonderful that would be, right?
I've thought about it while I was flying a little bit.
Yeah.
In the sky on a full moon night.
but I don't disagree. I think that the rule that exists makes sense. You should not be flying at night, because in order to safely fly at night, you would need things like a perfect full moon night, an area where there are no power lines. It's just wide open.
No clouds, no other aircraft, no people, no personal property that's not yours below you that you can endanger.
Exactly. So like beyond a reasonable doubt that nobody else is going to get hurt. These areas exist. If you look at, you said airspace. Mm-hmm. Like in the United States, the majority of the United States is Class G airspace, right? Mm-hmm. that means it's wide open. And out here in the wild, wild west, we don't have big trees. We have a lot of flat ground, flat open desert. And it would be something like every person who wants to get into flying but has never flown a paramotor dreams of what it would be like to be a paramotor. And I think that there are some individuals who, once they're into paramotoring, can then still have dreams of that, epic experience with flying. And I think for me, that's one of those things that, should I get back into flying? Can I do it safely? If I can actually see and I can see the stars and everything like that. Would you do it, Tom?
Well, you know how you can go down to Highway 9 and drive from here to Deming and do 100 miles an hour?
Yeah.
The speed limit's not 100 miles an hour, so you can't do it. You're not supposed to do it. But people do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of
was going to say, I know.
Yeah, but I kind of
cops that
see
do
this
it.
as the same thing. Of course you're not supposed to do it,
Yeah.
right? Just like you're not supposed to speed. But if no one knows you did it,
Did the tree
it
actually
happen?
fall?
Kind of thing. And
Isn't that how it
No
goes?
one's there to hear it.
And so I know
Did
it's
it make a
not.
sound?
I know it's not really, really right, and you shouldn't be bragging
Why
and
isn't
talking
it right?
and posting about it.
But why isn't it right? Ultimately, if
Well,
nobody's
I
getting
think
hurt.
I think because the conditions for doing it safely are so limited that it's better to say don't do it than to allow people to do it, and then we start having a lot more problems that start regulations like what you've been talking about.
The other issue with that too, to Anthony's point, if you start posting about it, well, he did it and that looks fun. I want to try it. And there's a lot of like the copycat potential. And my stance still is that it's not legal and it shouldn't be done. And there's
Right.
reasons for that. And we share the skies with other aircraft, and that's why there are certain rules. But also, if you're going to be breaking the rules, who would? I mean, I know there's viral videos out there of guys outrunning the cops and stuff. You're just asking to get in trouble and get other people in
But
trouble. It's
if-
really
if-
irresponsible.
If Tucker or Kyle Mooney were to say, "Hey, Alexis, like, I just think it would be so cool to fly at night. Like, and I think I'd really love to do it. I'm going to go out to the middle of nowhere and do that." What do you say to them?
Oh, I hope they don't say that to me.
You say
I don't know. That's a situation where it's like you're put on the spot, and especially trying to be a representative of an organization. I can guarantee you, I have not been perfect. The little angel that's always done everything right. I know, and I would love to pretend that I was, but I can't. But I also feel like my position in the organization, I have to lead in a certain way where if the president's not following the rules, why should I? So there's a certain level to that as well. And I do want to preserve the freedoms we have. And so that's really the ultimate goal, the mission. And so if people are going to be breaking the rules, I know there's never going to be 100% compliance with every rule, and that's with anything. But I want people to be safe. I want them to have the tools they need to remain safe, and the knowledge and value. And like I want it to be good.
So you can understand, at least you can understand the appeal. Not that you would condone it, but
And I do know the appeal. I've been privileged enough to fly not just at night, but in Class D airspace, with performing with the team, Airythmia, and it is special and it is cool, and it also has different levels of dangers to it with visibility and depth perception.
For sure.
But
you don't want to get up in the air and realize, oh God, this is terrifying. I didn't expect this. It's the same thing with learning how to fly. I can understand that. Let me move on to Adam Newbloom. Do you know Adam?
I feel like I know the question, but you'll have to tell me because I was reading a lot of them.
Do you know who he is? He's a super wonderful person. I love Adam. He's been here to the house and we've gone flying together.
I do know the name.
I skipped some of the, long parts of the things that they submitted, but just getting to Adam's question, he says, what are your goals for the USPPA this upcoming year? And as a representative of this organization, what message would you like to share with new and current pilots for 2025?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
so
that's a big question.
I think one of my big goals is to create the systems within the organization so that there's higher ease in transition.
Yeah.
Noah jumped into the president position and really injected some momentum into what we had going on, and there was more excitement and reinvigoration.
He gave it a facelift.
Absolutely. And now that has happened, board member terms are 2 years. So I do feel like he stepped down from the president position last April, and that's when I was put into that position. I spent a lot of last year in a very reactive stance to things that were happening, website issues, membership issues, whatever it was. And I want it to be where it's not so hard to get a grasp on what's happening, but that we can be more proactive and less reactive. So that involves putting systems in place and having information in place for the leadership of the organization that in times of transition, they can hit the ground running and keep rolling the ball. And among those goals, we want that transition to be easier. I want us to be on a more re-cushioned financial place.
Right.
And I also want to address a lot of those value issues. I want it to be clear. How do you earn ratings? Why should I earn ratings? And what do I personally get as a paramotor pilot from this organization that's supposed to protect me, but it might not seem beneficial to the individual?
Yeah.
It brings up a good question because, like I told you, I have a P1 and a P2, but not from the USP.
Yeah. Paragliding ratings. Yeah.
Well, no, it's also, I guess you're right. So would I be grandfathered into new ratings given
So
my
that's
experience
another
and stuff?
portion of that's another portion of what I think needs to be addressed within the ratings is, so hypothetically, you flew for 2 years and you reached a PPG2 level. If you put down the sport and don't touch it for 8 years, should you still retain that PPG2 or 3 rating when you come back? You're not at that same skill level. So I think a recurrency requirement to maintain these ratings is an important thing to address, but there's also a chicken and the egg situation. If someone earns the rating, but they have to do more to either maintain it or re-earn it, what's the value in it for them? Do they care to go through that process? So there's a lot to consider with that, and a lot for us to establish to make it valuable. And that in turn makes ratings more valuable. If you have to work and earn a rating and maintain a level, then that rating is more valuable than reaching that level and you get it forever.
So that sounds like keeping a flight log and everything like that, which I've never done, which I intended to do when I first started.
I don't like the idea.
I don't like the idea
No, I started
of a flight
doing
log because I don't personally
don't
keep
either.
a flight
Yeah,
log.
I intended
and
to, but
that's a
quit.
nice freedom that we have in the sports. We don't need to. And I mean, I don't know how that looks specifically, and there's various ways that we can manage it. But there's a handful of things that are listed in the PPG2 rating. There's knowledge portion and there's proficiency portion.
Right.
You don't need to keep a flight log to demonstrate proficiency in a few areas to a certified instructor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's also a lot of individuals within the paramotoring community who love the officialness. Like they will have pre-flight checklists and they will log their hours and they really treat it as if it's like general aviation.
Right.
Not me. I mean, it's kind of just like the thing you can throw on your back that allows you to fly. Sure. I mean, granted, you should obviously take it seriously because this can kill you, as I, nearly
learned.
Tom Minnick, really appreciate Tom Minnick's support over the years. His question is, what are the biggest challenges facing the PPG community? How is the USPPA responding to these challenges? And what can the community do to help? He says, flying sites are always a challenge to find. I have a few that I use, but we all tend to keep them guarded as it doesn't take much to spoil one. Does the USPPA have any resources for finding other flying sites? So
that's a great question. So the second half of it was right in line with what I was thinking. I think the biggest challenge is that the paramotor community faces is we're not paragliders where that mountain and that mountain and that mountain are established sites. We're not skydivers where you go to this airport into that plane and you can jump here. We have to search and find our own places to fly. And a lot of times that's private property. Now it's both site access and public perception. Now it's something in the wider aviation community, fixed wing aviation, where there's going to be noise complainers near an airport. That's always a problem. Now, paramotor pilots, we are almost in a way the skate punks of aviation, and we are easier to push around because we don't have
Numbers behind
the
us.
numbers or the perceived legitimacy maybe as an established airport with commercial operations. And so if we're operating at an airport that we're allowed to be at, as long as we can safely assimilate, we should have permission to be there. And that is a challenge for the community. We do have resources by reaching out to our other larger organizations. I know that EAA, they have a legal team and they have done things to support all different aspects of aviation when things have come up in a legal sense. And so there's an entire group of EAA that is ultralight specific, and we get to represent paramotors in that. And by we, so there's a few of us that are the paramotor liaisons to EAA. Justin was a chairman for them for a while, or a councilman, and he's still a chairman. We run the field at Oshkosh EAA during AirVenture, so they do know that we do things well in some ways, but we do need support, and they're a resource we can reach out to. And I would love for that to be more widely known and reciprocated, because that we don't have the dollars or the manpower to legally fight a housing, an HOA or something if it's a neighborhood next to an airport. So the site access and the public perception is the challenge for us.
That's what I was thinking would be one of the greatest benefits of the USPPA would be having a team of, or just an individual, ideally a team of people who can go out and combat any sort of local problems.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the problems exist higher up in the FAA. My own personal belief is the FAA doesn't really care for the time being. I don't think that they've
got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, they've got so much, especially with what you've been hearing in the news.
Group of 4
right?
paramotor pilots that are not being allowed to fly at the airport that they want to use.
Right. They're so deep in this crash in Washington D.C., which is super tragic. And then the medical flight that went down, and plus they've got thousands of flights in the air at any given moment. So they're paramotors. Like, so long as we're not interfering with what we did have an incident. And so this is why I believe it, because there was that incident somewhere in Texas, middle of Houston, where a paramotor pilot
mid-air
collision,
and they were flying in technically legal airspace, but they were so close to the edge of that airspace, high enough, up enough that it was still in an area that was dangerous. And a lot of times when I'm teaching about airspace, I'm like, there's speed limits in the sky, and there are legal, you can be here and you can't be here, and then there's the make good decision making.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yeah, and we have that
exactly.
here. I fly next to an airport.
Right? What did the FAA do about that?
Nothing recourse to paramotors, which was a good thing. So there's been a few pieces of history.
And it killed the pilot. I mean, it killed the pilot.
Both. The paramotor,
the
and the fixed wing
the
pilot.
fixed wing. But
so we've had a few things in our history where were newsworthy. That was fatal, which is a big deal. Now that, like you mentioned, the FAA doesn't want to have to worry about us, and there's always going to be the off situation where things did not go the right way, the way that we all hope things go.
Yeah.
But one-off situation, maybe to them, and the trickle down of conversation regulation was not a big enough event where they needed to adjust regulation. But if that happened more frequently, then it's gonna cause some attention and maybe consideration
more frequently or on a bigger scale.
Correct.
And I think most of the time they have to deal with paramotorists from the FAA. It's more of a nuisance type issue. Like with me when I got called on by the FAA. Because I'm flying next to an airport, which is right next to my house. And one person...
A private airport, too.
Yeah, airport. One person that has an airplane in a house at that airport decided that I shouldn't be there.
So
the FAA called me and said, hey, we know you're not in the wrong. We just hope that you two of you can contact each other and work this
Like
out.
literally
because
have
we
a
don't wanna be
beer
involved.
together, you know.
And it seems like the couple of times Tucker has talked about the same thing. It sounds like the same kind of thing. It's just like we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's, doing the paperwork. We know you're okay. It's not a big deal to us. Just make it go away.
I know when we're the Airythmia team is flying at air shows, there's always the main FAA person who's in
Yeah.
on all of our briefings, and they go through and they check and make sure that everyone's got their pilot certificate, their aerobatic certificates, everything that they need to operate in the manner that they are, whether they're doing aerobatics low to the ground or they're just flying demonstration, whatever it is. And usually they get to us and like, I didn't
You've got
even read
nothing.
103 before I saw you were going to be here. Like they've got bigger fish to fry.
Well, I think that the point I wanted to get to is that I think that one of the obvious benefits to supporting the USPPA would be if the organization could help pilots at that local level, whether it would be talking with Cielo Dorado, the private airport that Tom's referring to, or just talking with what are these housing associations? HOAs. And maybe trying to barter a peace agreement between them, and maybe communicating with the local communities to see how they could foster an environment where the locals, the non-flyers, the ground dwellers,
It's safe and accepted.
is accepted in a way to kind of make it more positive, whether that's materials that they can hand out to their neighborhood people and say, hey, this is what we love, and like encourage them to come out to the field and see the gliders up close or something like that, and just be an advocate for them on that end. It's not like they necessarily need to have something given to them like the magazine. Don't ever do away with the magazine. It's really cool. But to get out there and shake hands and kiss babies.
It's true. I think that the pilots who are able to appear the best as of being a good neighbor are the
Yeah.
ones that don't run into issues as much. And I would love to figure out ways where we can better foster site access and
Right.
managing the struggles that people come
Like
against.
with the city. Like what if I'm excited. I'm
I
really
can see it.
passionate about this.
Yeah.
Like here in El Paso, this field, did you see that, Clint? The sign they put up at the field?
No motor vehicles.
I just saw it the other day and I was like, damn it, is that one of those signs that means we can't do what we do?
It's not going to be adhered to
Must
by
still
any
do it.
means. But
Wow.
I think it's so dumb that we need people to talk to the city and say, we don't need the airport. We don't want to be next to the airplanes. We are slow. We don't want to jam up that. The city obviously loves and values their local airports. The local airports really don't want to pertain themselves the majority of the time with paramotorists. Granted, we can use a lot of these small airports, but it's not doing the airport a service. We don't provide them with money like general aviation does. We just walk on through the gate and say, hey, we're here to use your airport. We don't need that airport.
You've got a great point, though, is many people, and I don't know if this is an American thing or it's a human thing, people want to know what's in it for them. So if we are flying out of this little field and grandma walking grandchild feels endangered because she doesn't understand what we're doing, or we're abusing our access because we're flying at sunrise and it's early and the house is adjacent to the field, hear this noise when they're still trying to sleep, that I can understand why people would potentially get upset. And that's why fostering being a good neighbor, maybe varying your flying sites. Like these are all things that as good neighbors we should consider.
Like State Farm.
And State Farm. Yeah. Did you say State Farm?
Yeah, like a good neighbor.
Like a good neighbor. Oh, yes.
but
That
I
reference
think-
went over my head a little bit. I got you now. But yes, I agree. So being a good neighbor in that sense, understanding how we are impacting the people around us and why maybe they don't want us there. If it's as simple as ensuring someone at an airport that we can safely assimilate and we're not taking away from them, that's something that we can manage. If it's a neighborhood noise complaint, maybe that we can also manage that by varying our flying sites. There's all things we can do to improve our access.
Yeah.
But I know also that having a flying site close by means you fly.
Right.
If you have to start driving 40 minutes to go fly at all, you're not going
And
to
now
do
all of a
it. So
sudden, the
that's one of the
organization,
challenges.
you're gonna have memberships drop off because people can't fly as easily.
Right from
That's
their
the whole
house
point
or
of
close by.
paramotoring.
But I
Is the
think
access.
for a lot of
easiness.
people, it's even more than the nuisance and being a good neighbor. It's like the city of El Paso saying you can't fly from any of our parks. And why are they doing it? Because there's lawyers involved, right? And there's the legality of assuming that liability
Then they
of
just
someone
need
getting
to
hurt on
create.
your property. And so
they need to
that's
create a
a
place.
way bigger fish that you have to fry and try to get past. And
Yeah, but that's where they can come in potentially, in addition to everything that they're doing. And then, that's something as a community. It's like, well, they're doing that, and that's huge.
That's a great point, though. So
it's all ordinances.
if it's like a legal thing and a liability thing, maybe that's something that I know there's multiple different kinds of insurance that can be assessed on anything. But if it's third party liability insurance, and
You'd
that's
show that
something
to
that
them,
No.
if that's the concern, like there are ways to quell that concern. And if that's why they
It's
don't want you
un-American.
in your local park, then maybe that's something that
And
can
it-
be
and it
managed. But
could
it's
start.
identifying what that issue is. Why do they not want you there?
So it starts with a
I don't
complaint.
like that.
No?
I don't like the insurance idea.
I understand that, but
Why?
a lot of times it starts
Why?
as a complaint, right? Someone's causing a nuisance.
Tom's
there's a
going off. I
complaint.
got to let Tom go off real quick.
Real quick. Because I'm going to tell you how it escalates to where it gets to where
Yeah.
now you're cut off, like the sign up here. It's like, and Tucker's talked about it, it's a complaint from someone nearby. They go to the city council, they talk, the city council creates an ordinance.
Yeah.
And a lawyer sits there and goes, yeah, that's legal, we can do this. And now you're fighting uphill
Well, then,
battle, right?
it's just one of those unfortunate things. Like you ask why I don't think that we should have to carry insurance. The problem that I have with the insurance thing is just the I think the upkeep of it. I think in my mind, I just love the idea of paramotoring being this truly free experience. The cost of entry to get in is already pretty steep, and being required to get insurance is one step closer to being general aviation.
What if it was
What
a
if there's
benefit
people from
of
out
the
of town?
organization, though?
What organization?
The USPPA. Like that was what my thought was. If it could become something where a part of being a member of the organization, I think in some of the
insurance
online
with the USPPA.
Yeah, I know there's multiple types of insurance.
yeah,
So
Making it available.
maybe
If it
Having
takes out
it
the
available.
guesswork, because I think if I had to go and search for insurance, who the hell's going to insure my paramotor?
well, so insuring your paramotor is
It's
it's
liability.
different.
I mean, I'm saying how do I get
So-
insurance?
So O2 Sports Insurance through USUA, they do offer third-party liability insurance for paramotor pilots, and I think
What's it
our
covered up
policy is about $600 some a year, and that's something that we hold as a business. But that's one of those
This
things.
is your insurance company?
The USUA, O2 Sports Insurance.
What is USUA?
I hold
I don't understand.
ultralight something. Someone should fact check me on this, but we have it on the USPPA website, and it's something that's out there, but it's also
And it's $650.
third party liability insurance. And like you said, it's not something that you want to have to maintain, and you have to have your card with it.
Well,
and if you have to prove it to city council so you have access to the site, those are hurdles to jump through. And a dream would be that if you're a member of the organization, you're able to attain insurance to cover your paramotor, whether
Yeah.
you're in a car accident or a paramotor accident. You have medical insurance, you have third-party liability insurance. But there's lots of different types and facets.
So
But if we
what's
could
the
start
point?
somewhere,
What's the point? Like, what are the odds of inflicting damage that is going to justify a $650 a year insurance policy?
I think it's the unknown.
An insurance company has to base it. Our finance guy over here, that's why we bring him onto the show. What is that called when they come up with how?
Actuaries, they're
Oh,
actuarial.
you're finance too.
I don't claim to be.
Okay.
Well, they rate policies, life
Yeah.
insurance policies. So if you skydive, paraglide, paramotor, base jump, etc., then they'll add a certain number of dollars per $1,000 of coverage. So the last time I sought out insurance outside of work, it was $5 more per $1,000 of coverage annually, on the premium. So just, 500,000, that's 5 times 500 extra dollars a year on top of the normal premium. So it's an extra $2,500, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think you're looking at it from your point of view when really it's coming from another point of view. You're trying to protect yourself. The city's trying to protect itself by making sure you have insurance so they're not on the hook for anything you might possibly or anybody else that's flying might possibly do. And I think that's the big deal. That's why the ordinances come up and they have these new regulations on. You're not flying around here unless you have insurance.
It's a site access thing. So that's another thing that comes up in paragliding is they have this site that's designated for these pilots. So it's almost like a known entity. They know the potential risks maybe with it. And that's why they say this is a P2 rated site. This is a P3 rated site. And so again, I think it really does come down to understanding the perception issues that we're causing and then figuring out a way to satisfy so that we can retain access to our sites, because losing flying sites is so horrible. It keeps people from flying.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that the insurance should be less expensive for something like this. It should not cost as much as it costs to insure a car.
I agree. It's a big hurdle right now.
That level of liability, if a car's smashing into like walls and then continue on their way into a person's house and kill one of the occupants inside the house, we're not killing any. In the history of paramotoring, has anybody died that's just been a bystander? Like, has there been somebody on the ground who's died? I know in skydiving there were. You always sent me those creepy ass videos. But
I see what you're saying.
But
Like the rate has to match the activity, the risk associated.
Yeah, to some extent, and that's where
one thing that could probably help with that is having a good incident database, good statistics that lend itself to being able to be reviewed potentially.
Going back to like, I'm a cop. Who is going to pull me over and ask for my insurance on a paramotor? Who's going to regulate
and
that?
I think that's something. It doesn't come down to you're flying from here, I'm pulling you over. It could be a tool to help us retain sites when these signs come up. You're like, nah, I can. And why do you not want us here? And
honestly,
again,
I
it's
think a lot of these are
understanding
going to
the
go back
issue.
to a noise ordinance, not a danger factor.
Sure.
That's 100% what it is. It's a bunch of grumpy old Clints over there.
Yeah.
Wait, you're a cop? I thought I smelled bacon.
So a lot of times when it comes to noise ordinances, there's time frames on them. So you could imagine that summertime when sunrise is very early and sunset is very late, people to be more sensitive to it. And if we are similar in decibel levels to a lawnmower, lawnmowers a lot of times in neighborhoods are limited, I don't know, like 9 a.m. to certain times. With thinking like that, we are prohibited in some ways, because if we want to be flying at 5:30 in the morning and the noise ordinance isn't till 9, like how do we assimilate and not bother our adjacent community?
Yeah. Well, what if the USPPA could take a role in creating new sites, like USPPA designated sites in cities where there are a lot of people who paramotor? Like, I mean, land out here is a dime a dozen, and there are some places that are 6 acres. We looked into purchasing a site collectively as a group sometime not that long ago to just be able to have and offer that.
I think that sounds like a really great idea. There's logistical problems with it, obviously.
Yeah.
Does it involve the land needing to be purchased and owned by the entity? USPPA doesn't have the financial capability to purchase land all over the place. And in order to serve the masses of the community, it would have to be everywhere. Because like we said, we have little pockets of pilots all over the place. And if you have to drive 40 minutes, you're not going to fly and utilize those sites. So it would have to be so widespread that it would have to be something where they didn't need to own the land, but maybe were facilitators. So there's a lot of hurdles with that. I love the idea. It would protect flying sites for people, but logistically creating that reality, I think there might be other ways we can do it easier. And my first thought went to insurance or legal backing with some other helpful aviation organizations. And
Yeah.
the nice thing is I'm not the only one coming up with these ideas and making decisions. We've got people and coming up with ideas, and anyone, we
Right.
love our volunteers. We're all a volunteer organization. So if people want to help or have ideas, we want to hear them because we're trying to serve the community.
Right. So another question from Martin says, hello. As a small part of the PPG community, I like safety at fly-ins continuously. The same standard should be adhered to USPPA or non-sanctioned. How can you create a standard and create a simple rules, etiquette, respect at these get-togethers?
I love that question. So, Gada, Dr. G, she is currently the co-chairman of competition with Leah. I started having a conversation with her last year at Bad Apples, where we talked about the benefit of potentially having USPPA event guidelines, where there's recommendations for if you're going to hold an event, how can you create the environment where it's safe and pilots can have a great time there. And it could start as guidelines. And sometimes people just need to be able to read the list book. Oh, that is a great idea. That would help make this a safer thing. And especially as events become larger and larger, it's more necessary for there to be recommendations. And it's on the USPPA, our responsibility to ensure that people have the resources to know how to remain safe in those events. So I think that's a great... I think I have a great answer for that, but facilitating that, I would love to see that start to happen.
Yeah, totally.
That would be great, but it's a pie in the sky kind of thing because you're only as safe as everybody in the air with you, right? And
Correct.
so I was just at the Wilcox Playa Fly-In last year, and it was great. I had fun. There was only about 30 of us, so it wasn't that many. But after about 10 minutes flying around everybody else, I said, okay, I think I'm on borrowed time now because we were just like flying rats going in every different direction.
Scary.
And after about 10, 15 minutes of having a lot of fun doing that in close proximity with a lot of people, I said, okay, it's time for me to go off on my own a bit. And plus it's stressful when you're never stop looking for people around you and not knowing if there's someone above you can't see or right behind you can't see. So yeah, that's going to be a struggle. But yeah, to have a common set of expectations, and then also after that, and I know a lot of fly-ins do, like if you're not following rules, you get admonished for it and hopefully taken out of
Not
the sky.
welcomed to continue flying. Because you're right, you want to remain safe, and they're in close proximity. When these events become larger and larger, you're having to trust and rely on everyone else to maintain that safety around you as well.
And I don't think a lot of people are used to flying with a lot of people around them until they get to one of these events. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, yeah, very intimidating.
Right. From Dr. Jeffrey Miller, he says, what advice would you give a father of a 13-year-old girl who is interested in learning how to paramotor? What advice would you give her, woman to woman, before she took the sport up? Just FYI, I am about 5.5 years into the sport. Very safe, but do fly advanced wings. Thank you for your response.
I love that question also. So just almost 2 years ago, I got to train Kylie O'Connor. So Ryan O'Connor's then 13-year-old daughter how to fly.
Yeah.
And she still flies to this day. She's doing really awesome stuff. She's going to have her 2-year flying anniversary on April 17th.
Cool.
So coming up. So
Cool.
I think it's similar advice that I would give to anyone, but I hope like young girls in particular would hear it is one, most people can do this. Like if it's a confidence thing, just know that you're capable. We have young girls, young kids jump into this. And usually when it comes to age and size, I have a few qualifications. One, you must be able to physically manage the equipment.
Right.
And then 2, you have to approach it with the appropriate amount of respect. So I think one of my first suggestions is to find an instructor that you trust, especially for a young woman, a young girl. They got to be able to listen to that instructor and trust and be comfortable in that situation where they're receiving instruction and going into this situation that can be very nerve-wracking and scary and outside of their they're normal operating. At 13 years old, they haven't even gotten to the point usually where they're driving yet.
Right, yeah.
And for us, when we're driving, we're in cars all the time. So we at least have this familiarity with that sort of activity, whereas flying, it's completely new. So I think anyone who's endeavoring to start flying, they need to be able to trust that instructor. And I think everyone should talk to multiple before they decide to pick one that they're going to have that relationship with, because they need to trust them, and it is a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's really great. I got one last question from a Leandra Vella. She says, so excited for this podcast. Alexis, you've accomplished so much in a relatively short time, becoming an instructor, a team pilot, and now president of the USPPA. What has been the biggest challenge you faced in balancing all these roles, and how has it shaped your approach to both paramotoring and leadership in the sport?
So I think when I find something that I'm interested, I jump into it. This is an activity that I thought I would do because it would scratch I want to get in the air itch.
Right.
And then it turned into a job and another job, and then my extracurricular volunteering, and then another volunteering aspect. So I did kind of jump all into it. I don't like being bad at things. So I think that wasn't the challenge in it. The challenge was in the leadership side of it.
Yeah.
In general, I'm one of those people that I'm much better number two in command. I see where I let someone else be the idea person. And I'm like, okay, I can help implement that. I'm really quick to I'll jump in and I'll do the work.
Yeah.
And in this USPPA leadership role, I've had to really learn how to ask for help and rely on other people's ideas and let them do some of the work, and let myself focus on bigger mission and trajectory and making sure all the things are covered. Because if I leave myself to do all the little things on my own, we're never going to get anywhere. So that has been a big challenge, is learning how to be a leader, communicating with people effectively, making sure that all of us are on a same page. We're listening to things, considering all the different perspectives, and figuring out what's needed and how to potentially address all of that.
Right. We've been for over 2 hours, 2 hours and some 2 hours. And that's the longest.
Chatting for a while. Yeah. We had some awesome questions.
Yeah.
Conversation. I think we touched a little bit on everything there was.
Yeah.
I thank you guys for having me. Not only did I get to be on the podcast, but you opened your home to me, and she took me out for a 4x4 ride in the desert, and you fed me, and this is a set.
You're giving it away, Alexis. This is a studio.
It is a studio with an apartment in the back.
Yeah.
That's his trailer on the other side.
Yeah.
No, seriously, that's so cool that you flew all the way out here to come and share this with the community.
You're opening people's eyes to the fact that you exist and to the benefits of joining and to what's to come down the road. So
absolutely. And I hope this gives people, even if you're not a USPPA member, we're looking for feedback and ideas, and I want to know where people are running into issues. That's why we're here. That's why we're volunteering. So we want to help, and I want to make it so the USPPA membership and ratings are so valuable that people want to earn them, and it's not that question of why do I care.
Go on over to usppa.org to learn everything there is to know about the organization. And if you haven't done so, consider becoming a member of the USPPA. You will certainly get a badass magazine for doing so. Aside from that, we also benefit from your support. So it is free to join our Patreon at patreon.com/Anthony Vella. That's where you'll find the upcoming guests, and you will have the ability to ask questions like we did today for Alexis. So thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.